So how did I get into all, capital ALL, all of this? By this, I mean Alexander technique, meditation, music, spirituality, and the synthesis of all of those things, because I do see art and spirituality as one and the same. Well, I was always a musician. I grew up singing in a professional children's choir and took various instrumental voice lessons, theater, dance. And I didn't even really think of myself as artistic. It just was my life. And when I went to university, I was in university and conservatory at the same time. And after my freshman year, I did a apprentice program where I was singing all of the time in these professional operas, and I came back and my voice was just not functioning the same. I would go to all of these fancy hospitals and they would scope my throat, the laryngoscope, and they would say, "You're the healthiest person we've seen all day. Nothing's wrong with you. Go take some voice therapy or something." And I started doing this and I said, well, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? Why am I not functioning in the way that I feel I used to or I could? And they said, oh, just a little bit of tension, too much, which is basically like saying too much stress. So if you go to any doctor nowadays for almost any malady, they will tell you stress is the underlying thing. And I had heard this whisper years before from my back surgeon. I had a back operation for scoliosis when I was 13, that this thing called the Alexander technique would be really good for me to study. He didn't really tell me what it was. He didn't tell me much about it, but he told me, oh yeah, we see a lot of great improvement with this. And he was a wonderful surgeon, and I was able to heal tremendously easily compared to many people who had that operation. And I kept hearing about it over the years, not just from him and his colleagues, but from other musicians. Apparently it was a real lifesaver to many artists, but no one could define it for me. So I was determined. There was just this like voice internally that was like, oh, I must find this. So I went and I started Googling Alexander technique plus Baltimore, which is where I was in school at the time. Nothing. And I was like, well, I think it's kind of like yoga, so I'll call a yoga studio. And literally the first Bikram yoga studio I called, I was like, I know this is weird. Do you happen to know if, I don't know, like anything about this thing called the Alexander technique? She was like, oh, yes, of course. I know this wonderful teacher. Her name is so-and-so. She lives right around here. She could define it for me in a really eloquent, simple way. I got that teacher's name, and within a week I was having lessons, and it was just a profound shift in my whole mind-body awareness, my awareness of what it is to move, be, and live in the world. And from that work and those weekly lessons, I started to not only feel better in my voice, feel better in my body. It was all of these small, tiny little changes in my everyday habits that overall compressed into a profound change in just a philosophy of everyday living. And I started seeing benefits that were not what I went in for. So as a result of that, I started getting into yoga and pilates and Feldenkrais and meditation and breathwork and all of these adjacent things that were also working on, let's say, cultivating the self, not just the self of the physical body, but also cultivating a sense of who I am in the world, how I want to be, and yeah, a truer sense of what I am beyond all the kind of materialistic or more superficial qualities that can, quote, define a being. And yeah, after many years of all of that practice, I found myself, probably when I was younger, less interested in meditation. I would do a little bit, and I was a Buddhist meditator, and I had great teachers in my life, but it wasn't until my mid-20s that became like, I really want to go deeper with this. I felt that it would help hone my creativity, and that was the main reason why I was most interested in it. But I would sit down to meditate, and despite the fact that I could have really profound spiritual experiences in nature or when singing or just moving down the street, I would sit down to meditate, and the technique I had at the time was sort of a non-technique. I was, being told not to think or to raise my hand when I was thinking. And I'm like, I'm a very analytical person. How can I not think? And it just wasn't working. It got to the point where my meditation was basically me sitting there with my eyes closed, reciting poetry that I found inspirational to myself, and yet still yearning for a way to actually systematically, cultivate the, quote, capital S self, a truer transcendental idea of what it is to be consciousness in a body beyond what I was doing. So I kept hearing about this guy, Tom Knowles, from one of my yoga teachers at the time, who said, look, he's coming, he's giving a free talk, like, you don't have to do anything more than it, just go. And I'm like, well, what do I got to lose? Like, if he could help her, and I think I'm a lot more disciplined than she is, like, okay. So I went and he started talking about how this practice that he taught, Vedic meditation, was a sound-based practice. It was not about not thinking. It was not about effort or trying or concentration. It was actually the opposite of all that. It was a really simple, effortless technique where we let sound or the mantra basically wash over the nervous system. So to cajole the nervous system from its normal stressed out waking state into this much more transcendental sense of what it is to be. So the sense of like pure awareness, pure beingness. And I was like, well, I know a lot about sound. Sound tends to work for me. Why not? And I learned, and I would say it was a very distinct and small, but profound shift in how I experienced not only meditation, but how I experienced life after. And from there, I got deeper and deeper into the practice over several years and ultimately went to India, had a very profound time doing lots of meditation. And, my teacher had said, you should become a teacher, you should become a teacher. And I was like, no, I became a teacher of this Alexander technique thing. I sing, I do other things. I don't have time to be a teacher of this. And then he's like, well, you're going to get to do like 14 hours of meditation a day and round. And I was like, sold. I want to go because I just wanted to meditate all day in, the hills of India. And I went and it was a beautiful experience. And we can talk more about that another time. But suffice to say, I came back. It was the pandemic and I had obviously a lot of time to think about what I wanted my life to be in terms of my artistic work, both writing and singing, in terms of the Alexander technique and meditation. And over the years, I've continued in all of them to different degrees. And it's my future life's work to bring them together. And that's what we're doing here under the auspice of Human Merely Being, which is to be a place to creatively express at the intersection of art and spirituality, and to also more formalistically explore the mind-body connection, consciousness through the Alexander technique and meditation.